What's up, everyone? Jacob Roach back here from the Killing Joke Studios and Mixing with Metal. I have something pretty cool I want to show you today, and I'm going to be talking about mastering in particular. So I'm part of a lot of groups, a lot of forums, stuff like that relating to audio, and in one of the groups I'm a part of, someone posted something about offering some free services just so people could network and, maybe stretch their feet a little bit, get some real work under their belts, and, try some new stuff out just to do it for fun, just to do it for practice, just to do it to learn. And so this is one of those things I did. I offered some free mastering for people. Mastering is something that I don't, specifically say I'm a mastering engineer or anything like that, because I'm definitely not. I kind of just have this at-home mastering thing that I do. And I wanted to stretch my feet a little bit on that. So anyway, I mastered this song by, I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name because I'm going to butcher it, but he sent me a question about what I did to master it. So I figured I'd share with all of you guys as well. Excuse me. So let's jump into this. I'm going to play it really quick. I'm going to start with the mastered version, then flip to the unmastered. So here we go. Cool. So I'm just going to bypass all of these plugins, and we're just going to start from the top. So first thing I got in here is FGX by Slate Digital. So here's where we're starting out. Cool, unmastered version. Obviously, we need to get a lot of volume in there, but we need to do a few other things as well. So let me minimize this. Blow this guy up real big so you can see. All right. So here we go. We have our track here, and as you can see, there's a ton of super hot transients in here, right? And that's not a bad thing necessarily, but we don't want to completely destroy them. So we're going to try and compress it a little bit on the front end to make sure that whenever we do hit the limiter, we're giving the limiter a more balanced mix so that every time the snare hits or whatever, it doesn't completely crush on the limiter. So I'm using FGX to do that. So I just have the comp engage, the FG comp, the compressor engage, the mastering compressor, not worrying about the limiter or the maximizer or whatever. I'm just trying to compress it a little bit. So I'm going to bypass it and bring it in and then share what I'm doing with it. Here how it's just kind of leveling it out a little bit, just giving it a little bit more balance, before we do more processing with it, just so that, again, when we further our processing, that we're not hitting things super hard. It's just giving us a little bit better level. As you can see, I'm like not even hitting a decibel of gain reduction. I'm floating in this region right here. So low ratio, 2-to-1 ratio. And then I have a slower attack and a faster release. I still want it to be punchy. I'm not trying to completely destroy the transients in there. I still want the transients to punch through, but I'm trying to even out everything a little bit. So by having a fast attack, a slow attack, I'm allowing those transients to come through. Having a fast release, those are still being punchy, and they're somewhere in the middle here so that it's not accentuating the transients, but it's still allowing them to poke through. So that's what's happening on my first as my first plugin. Next thing, I got some more compression going on. I have the linear phase multiband from Waves, and this is a big Joey Sturgis thing. If you've ever watched any tutorials or anything like that with Joey Sturgis, whenever he's talking about mastering, I think always the Lin MB is always involved. So let me bypass this and then I'll bring it in and I'll talk about what I'm doing with it. Cool. So I'm not trying to get like too scientific or crazy with this. I really don't mess with anything. Like in particular, I don't really dig into the particular bands unless there is a specific problem. Like right here with the lows, I brought this threshold down a little bit. I could probably bring it up actually. But as you can see, everything else, the threshold's the same. I'm just using these sliders over here. And really what this is doing is this just is giving a little bit of movement to the mix and kind of, bringing a little bit life to it. Here's without. It's just giving a little bit of movement to the different frequencies, just kind of giving it some energy, giving it some forward momentum. And it's one of those things that you can definitely hear. And if you're listening specifically for like, oh, tonally, what's happening to it, it might throw you off a little bit because tonally you can hear that we're losing some low end and stuff like that. I don't think that's insanely important right now. We're not losing a ton of low end, but we're definitely losing some. But I'm listening and focusing more to, okay, what's the energy of the track? Because right before it didn't have a ton of energy and this adds a little bit more to it. Cool. So moving forward, we have good old Pro Q2 set to linear phase. And linear phase, if you don't know, whenever you're using a non-linear phase or a non-mastering grade compressor, you introduce phase shift whenever you turn up or turn down a band. Real sciencey stuff, but basically what it means is it can get dangerous if you're not using linear phase stuff. So sometimes it could sound all right, but in this case it didn't. So I'm doing 5 moves here, and the biggest one I'm doing, technically the biggest one I'm doing is the filter, but biggest cut I'm making is not even 3 dB. So I'll bring this in and show you what it's doing. So this EQ is doing a ton for the mix, I think. It sounds wider, like a lot wider. If you're not listening on headphones, throw on a pair of headphones and re-listen to that part because the mix just opens up in a way that everything was kind of condensed to the center and now it just sounds wider. So let's walk through these steps here. I'm filtering out here at 38 hertz. This isn't scientific. I'll filter out generally around 20 hertz. If the bass is flubby, if we have too much low end, I'll filter out even more. And I don't think that's a problem. Especially for a track like this, because I don't want all of this frequency hitting my limiter. And like no one's going to hear anything between 20 hertz, and majority of people is probably not going to hear much below 40 hertz anyway. So I'm filtering out that, just cleaning up that low end so that when I do hit my limiter later on, I'm not completely killing it. Pulling out a little bit here at 130. Let's listen to that. Just cleaning up that low mid region, some cardboardy stuff going on. That's what's really, that move right there is really getting that wide effect because I'm taking that cardboardy kind of 500 frequency out, just taking a little bit of it out, taking a little bit away, and it sounds wider now. And then there was some nasty nasally stuff that I cut out as well. So I'll just group these together. This is 2.4 and 3.6. So I'll bypass those and bring them in. So, yep, just some cleanup EQ, and that has already done a ton. The key to EQ with mastering, in the case of something like this, something like linear phase Pro Q2 type EQ, which I'll explain why I'm saying that type of EQ when we get to our next plugin. The name of the game here is just really subtle moves, a dB, maybe 2, and trying just to find some stuff that's just a little obnoxious and just pulling a little bit out. And if you do a few of those moves, generally you'll find yourself with a track that just immediately sounds better. And when you're using linear phase, it typically doesn't sound too insane. So if you've been doing this process, but you haven't been using a linear phase EQ, try it with a linear phase EQ and it'll probably sound a lot better, just because you're not introducing that phase shift. And so whenever you make a move, it's the actual move. It's not affecting a bunch of other stuff. So what do I mean about the difference between EQs? This is what I mean. This is the Hammer EQ by Kush. And I guess A Design Digital, whatever. This is a hardware unit, a mastering EQ, or I guess people use it for mixing too, but a lot of people use it for mastering. And you can go kind of crazy with this stuff. I'm doing 4 dB boost on the top end, doing a 2 dB cut in the upper mids, and doing a 2 dB boost in the real low end to restore some of that low end lost with the multiband. And so this EQ is absolutely awesome. And so that's what I mean. You can go kind of crazy when you have a mastering grade kind of EQ. And different EQs are different. A Pultec's going to sound different than this, all that kind of stuff. So it's just up to your taste. It's up to your track, whatever it is. But I want it, boost 4 dB of 10K on the Pro Q2 here. I guess I could, but I don't want to deal with all of the, setting the Q and getting all that stuff perfectly when I can just pull this bad boy up and it already sounds amazing. So this does a ton. I'll just play it. So suddenly we went from a kind of muddy, really mid-range heavy mix to this open, bright, exciting thing. And it's great. I love this EQ so much, and I think it's only like $150. So if you master a lot, it's great on drum buses and stuff like that. But yeah, there's no big secret with this EQ. It's just it sounds absolutely amazing. So that does a ton for opening up the mix. And yeah, I love this EQ. So let's move on. Next plugin, Ozone 6. I don't care about your presets. Ozone 6. I'm using the exciter here, and I'll bring it in. Okay, cool. So typically when I use the exciter all the time in mastering. I typically go the retro setting. I like the way it sounds on a lot of stuff. You have to be really careful with it because if you go crazy with it, it can get real nasty sounding real quick. So just real subtle moves across the entire thing. This is just real subtle. And yeah, so I'm doing, I guess, 1 dB, I guess. I don't know what the unit is here. I'm doing 1 on each of these, and then I'm just using the mix knob to set it to taste. So the reason I'm doing that is because you can get something that sounds really unbalanced if you sit here and you're adjusting crazy amounts and then you're adjusting the mix and all that stuff. It's going to change the balance of your mix. It's going to change, if I did this with this mid-range area, the mid-range isn't going to punch through as much as everything else is. So I'm being really conscientious of that, just trying to add, kind of an even plateau. As you can see, there are differences in them, but those are differences I wanted to make. Those weren't accidentally made. So yeah, this is just adding a little bit of excitement, doing exactly what it is, adding a little bit of saturation in there, giving it a little bit of body, giving it a little bit of excitement in the top end, doing that cool stuff that Ozone does. Cool. So now let's get into the real meat and potatoes of mastering, our limiting, our loudness. How are we going to get this track loud? So if you've noticed up to this point, a lot of these plugins have been used, the compression, the EQ. A lot of these plugins, besides maybe these last two, have been used to, in some shape or form, to prepare for our limiters. And now we've done all this prep work, we can hit our limiters at a correct level and get this mix to be where it needs to be. So I'm using PAS meters by Waves to meter all this stuff, because I use different stages of limiting. So this setup right here, Ozone 6, Event Horizon, and Ozone 6 again, is something I learned from Brian Hood in his course From Shit to Gold, where he talks about mastering, and it's really cool. So first off, I'm pulling up my first master, and I'm just trying to do a little bit, not too much, not really shaving off anything, giving a little bit of volume, definitely within the safe zone. Not even getting close to chopping off any of those peaks, giving it some volume, right? And then I have the character set to fast on here. And then basically what I do is I take and I copy this limiter over, and then I change some settings. I might emphasize some transient a little bit if I need to. It depends. I turn on my dither, all that fun stuff. Really what I'm doing here is I'm not doing a whole lot of volume boost. Obviously, this could probably go back up here and be all right, and it wouldn't be giving me any volume boost. But really what I'm trying to do is just have it be my final limiter so nothing clips. And so that's why I have a ceiling of -2 dB. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong or not, but for some reason in Pro Tools, if the ceiling is set to 0 dB, it shows it as clipping. So I set my ceiling to -2. That leaves me in the safe zone as well for iTunes, YouTube, all of that fun stuff. If they're adding any sort of limiting themselves, that it's not going over because it's already at 0 dB. So good rule of thumb, I like to set my ceiling to -3, -2 dB. No one's going to hear a 0.2 or 0.3 dB difference, but it just gives you a little bit of space, a little bit of headroom, tiny little bit of headroom to work with other platforms where the music might be listened to. So that's what those two limiters are doing, and in conjunction, they're doing a little bit of volume. Definitely adding some volume to the mix, but the majority of what I'm doing is on Event Horizon here, and this is where I learned. This is the big mastering thing I learned from that course I was talking about, and this is why I pull up my PAS meters as well. So basically what you're going to do is you're just going to take this threshold and you're going to bring it down until it reaches around -8 to -10 RMS, not peak, RMS. And that's going to be a competitive range for this style of music, is -8 to -10 RMS. And so what Event Horizon is it can be a limiter, but I have it set to clip. And what it's modeling is a lot of mastering guys with really high-end A to D converters will clip those converters. So we think of clipping as really bad, but when you have analog hardware and you clip stuff, it actually sounds kind of nice, and that's why you use clippers on drums and stuff like that. So it's just kind of a different way to limit, and it's kind of providing a little bit of that mastering thing as if I had really high-end converters, which I don't. So this cool plugin kind of emulates that. Not pristinely, but it gives me a little bit better, more close of a finished product sound as opposed to just limiting in the box, so I don't have to go buy a $15,000 converter. So let's bring this threshold down, unbypass this, and then watch the meters, and we'll see our target. And there we go. Now we got the whole track mastered. We can bounce it out and we'll be good. So this is by no means a comprehensive way of how to master. I'm definitely not an authority figure to speak on how to master, but this is how I do it. And when you're in a home studio, when you're doing that sort of thing, learning how to master, even if you don't do it all the time, even if you send it to a mastering engineer, is never a bad thing. Just it helps with mixing. It helps understanding what a mastering engineer is looking for, so that whenever you send something off, you know things like, oh, hey, I should probably filter out everything below 25 hertz on pretty much all of my tracks. Maybe a few things I don't, but the majority of stuff probably should, because the limiters, it's just going to eat up headroom for the limiter, stuff like that. You learn those things, so it helps your mixing as well. So this is just kind of how I do it. Let me show you really quick. I want to give you a comparison, a match volume comparison. So I'm going to bypass all of the plugins pre-limiting and then bring those in to show you how much of an impact those are having on the kind of shaping of the mix. So you can see they're having a lot of shaping on the mix, and you could probably hear that they were having an impact on the limiters. They sound kind of, the limiter sounds kind of pumpy. And now the mix sounds exciting and there and everything like that. So yeah. Maybe this is not the correct way to do it, but this is how I do it, and it's been getting some pretty good results for me. So I hope this is helpful for you guys. Again, you can apply this stuff in mixing. I'm the more I learn about mastering, the more I learn about mixing as well. So the two, while they are separate things, mixing is not mastering and mastering is not mixing. There's definitely concepts you can learn from both of them to help you on both fronts. And so I think that's really important. So I hope this is helpful for you guys. If it was, please leave me a comment below. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to me on Facebook, down in the comments, wherever you need to send them, and I'll try and make a video to help you out. So thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.